Tell me how you and Chris got together, because really excitingly, like, we're recording this podcast just before we all have dinner as a foursome, and I've never met Chris. I've seen loads of beautiful photos of you together, and I'm really excited to meet her, and it's gonna be a lovely evening. I'm a little bit nervous as well, as you've told me that she is, but I'd love to hear, how it blossomed between you guys.
Why not? So my year, well, I'll just give a brief background. At the beginning of the year, it was really tough for me because a relationship I was in ended. It really blindsided me, and you were there for me. And I was reading back on some old journal entries, and it was a tougher time than I remember. Again, like, nostalgia paints over the cracks because I've found new love and I've had this beautiful relationship. I'm like, 2023 was amazing for me. Neglecting the first 3 months were very, very tough for me.
Yeah.
So much so that I ended up getting a therapist. I entered into therapy. I ended up giving up therapy because I thought that you were actually a better therapist than my therapist. And I think I'd forgotten about that. So that was quite a tough time. However, meeting Chris was really lovely. I went round her house, and with a mutual friend, Katie, I saw Chris, and immediately I was attracted to her. She's got like very cute little cheeks that go quite red, and it's very beautiful to have like these rosy cheeks. And I was attracted to her immediately. Her house was lovely. It had beautiful artwork on the walls. She's got a very cool dog. She's a dog behaviourist. She's a personal chef, so she cooks delicious food. And the kicker was her apartment was wheelchair accessible. And I was like, no way. I mean, oh my God, talk about a unicorn. Like, she is ticking all the boxes here. Like, I was going in her bathroom, and she's got like beautiful artwork in the bathroom, and I was like, wow, I can literally get in the toilet and shut the door behind me, like, this is really good. And I even peeked into the bedroom, and I remember thinking, I could get in there if I remember this is like the first time I was sort of like playing it out in my head, like, I kind of like this girl,
Yeah.
And then...
And I'm able to get in the bed, should that occur at any time in the near or distant future.
Exactly. So it was really lovely. I guess the seed was planted, and I said to my friend Katie, I'm quite fond of your friend Chris, like in a sort of platonic, she's very, very lovely.
Yeah.
She's quite fond of you too. And I was like, okay. Is this friend like matchmaking, or whatever?
Yeah, okay, cool.
It turns out she was.
Was she?
So I said, because one of my biggest insecurities is the wheelchair, like, you've got to see past the wheelchair if you're going to be in a romantic relationship with me. And that is something that a lot of people are unwilling to do, or at least it certainly is a deal breaker for a lot of people. Again,
namely you.
Yeah, maybe. I think it would be. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. I just, maybe because I was reflecting on before the accident, would I date someone in a wheelchair? Probably not. But again, like I say, Chris is a bit of a unicorn. She's not only open to that. She was attracted to me.
She sought it out. Yeah.
She apparently had spoken to my friend Katie and said, Fred, and she was like, he's got a girlfriend. And apparently she said something like, of course he does. And I remember thinking, oh really? Like, that's interesting. Yeah. So one thing led to another. I said I'm gonna ask her out. And so I think
hold on, I'd like to linger on this point a little bit more, because something that you have had in the past, something you struggled with, is like being broken. Like, you would identify yourself, or have in the past identified yourself, as someone that is broken because of your physical limitations, because of your accident, puts you in a wheelchair. And to have that insecurity hanging over you is a hefty burden. Lots of people are self-deprecating in many ways, but you have I really don't like my eyes, or my beard is funny, or I've got knobbly knees. But like, to have something concrete, essentially, that is like, well, this is my physical wheelchair, to sort of prove to myself that I'm broken, it's a huge thing to overcome. And we've talked about it before, and it's heart-wrenching to hear you talk about it when you're in the epicenter of like feeling broken, and it's all I can do to be like, oh, you're not broken, you're lovely. And then to have someone come to you with being fancied, being attracted to, and genuinely sorting you out. I don't mean sorts me out, mate. I mean, like, she sorted me right out. I mean, like, she has sought after you.
Yeah.
It's absolute proof in the other direction, because one would hope that from your position of being broken, that hopefully you could sidle up to someone and, like, you're very charming, you're good looking, and be like, oh, and you know what, I think I can look past the wheelchair. But so much more than that, she just saw you and was just like, I'd like a piece of that.
Yeah.
And how much has that done for you to, like, disperse that insecurity of brokenness?
I mean, it's inflated my ego massively. I'm just
shit, we're not going to be able to get in here then.
God's gift to women, just God's gift on wheels, just wheeling around. All the girls like, whoa, who's the wheelie guy? I'm like, whoa. No,
Steady on.
It was beautiful. It was great for my self-esteem. It was, but also I think we just had a connection, like, from the start. I thought, I've got to ask this girl out on a date. I think, again, coming from a relationship as well, I just felt like I was dateable. Like, I think I've spoken before about self-love being really important. I heard a really great quote recently, like, self-love isn't vanity, it's sanity. And I thought, oh, that's cheesy but lovely.
Sound right, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm going to put a pin in that because I really need a wee. So I'm going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, man, I shouldn't have drunk so much. I've been wiggling my bum for ages.
Yeah, I have been watching you wiggle. Like, it doesn't look like a spasm.
So yeah, it was lovely to hear that she was attracted to me, and I didn't have to sort of, I guess, pursue her, or you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that made it a hell of a lot easier to ask her out on a date. It gave me a lot of confidence having a mutual friend saying, "Yeah, go on, mate. She's probably going to say yes."
Yeah.
So I asked her out for a picnic down by the lake, and I said, I remember making a quiche, and as the quiche came out, classic Fred and his quiches. So as the quiche came out the oven, I took a picture of it and I sent her a picture saying, "Do you fancy some quiche?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you want to go for a picnic down the lake?" And she said, "Yeah, that'd be great."
Yeah.
So she said, "Can I bring anything?" And I asked her to bring a joke about a shoe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Because,
that's what every picnic needs.
Oh, why not? It was good. So I brought 3 jokes about a shoe. She brought 1. I won't go into them because...
How modest of you.
But yeah, it was funny. So we had, like, the whole, It was wonderful. I asked her about, like, where she was from, if she's close with her family. I was showing genuine interest, getting to know her. And it went really well. And it went on so well, in fact, that I ended up being late for work because we stayed there far longer than I anticipated. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to go.
Yeah.
I've got to go to work. I'm late. So on the drive back, I said, oh, this was great for a first date. Sort of because we hadn't actually said it was a date.
Sure, yeah.
And she said, "Oh, is this a date?" And I said, "Oh, I think it's a date, isn't it?" And then I said, "Oh, I'd love to see you again for another date," sort of thing. And she was like, "Oh, okay." And she's very shy, she's very timid, and so it was very, very, very lovely, very, very sweet. And then on our second date, I suggested that we. Because she cooked a beautiful Spanish omelette, and I said, "Oh, I'd love to know how to make one of those." And she said, "Well, I could teach you." And I was like, "Okay, wonderful. I've got a great idea. Why don't you come over, and you could teach me how to cook a Spanish omelette? But what a great idea is if you take my spare wheelchair, we can wheel around together, and you can see things from my perspective." And she was very open to this. She was like, absolutely. She completely embraced it. She didn't get out the wheelchair for many hours. She even tried to go to the toilet in the wheelchair.
Really?
I wheel in and could see how it was very hard, and she was like, "Oh my God, how do you do everything from your wheelchair? It's so difficult." And I was like, "Oh well, just like little things, like for example, instead of like reaching over, sort of I sidle up to the side so I can reach things like." And she was like, "Oh, it's really cool, like how she could see how resourceful I was." I guess she was very impressed, and we made the Spanish omelette together, and then we played a beautiful game where, it was, I won't go into the details of the game, but I said to her, a little risque move, but I said, how about we up the stakes? And she said, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, how about, the loser has to give the winner a kiss.
You cheese monster.
And she just blurted out, okay.
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, oh, okay, brilliant. So
That was
she
easy.
seems keen. And she sort of slipped how,
Yeah.
I guess she gone from playing it cool to okay.
Yeah,
and I was
yeah.
like, oh, excellent. Well,
Oops. I lost.
and then we had a beautiful first kiss, and I guess it all blossomed from there. And that second date was really lovely because we had a very honest conversation about where things were going to go from there, and I had a very honest conversation about sex, because I think if you have a spinal cord injury, there was probably a part of her that was thinking, does his dick work?
Sure.
Absolutely,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And I said, yes, it does. There's a few caveats. For example, I need to use Viagra, for example, and there's a few other things. I won't go into personal details, but she was fully on board with that. She said, yeah, that's not a deal breaker for me. That's fine. But she did say, if you couldn't have sex at all, that would have been a deal breaker. So, and I was like, okay, well, that's cool. It's just to reassure you, I can. It's just, it's slightly different. And it was I've never started a relationship like that with such beautiful honesty, really, really beautiful honesty. And it was very, very lovely to just communicate that out in the, just out there. I've certainly used Viagra in the past, pre-injury, post-injury, and I certainly haven't been as honest about it as that, just out there saying it. And it was very, very refreshing to have that open and honest communication. And I think we've certainly communicated honestly like that for ever since. So we started off very honest, and it's been very honest and ever since. And we are very, very compatible. She's very sweet, and everything's been hunky dory from there.
Congratulations! It's been really nice to